Kala didn't know the number she'd accidentally texted belonged to the most powerful alpha on the continent. She didn't know he'd spent 7 years searching for someone exactly like her, following cold trails and dead ends across 3 countries. And she definitely didn't know that one mistyped digit would bring him straight to her door and shatter every lie she'd built her life upon. All she knew was that her feet ached, her back screamed. And if the couple in booth 9 didn't stop arguing about their appetizers soon, she might cry right there on the sticky linoleum floor. The lamplighter diner wasn't much: cracked vinyl seats, fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying insects, and a menu that hadn't changed since 1982. But it was the only place that had hired a pregnant woman with no references and a past she couldn't explain. So Kala worked the graveyard shift, smiled until her cheeks hurt, and pretended her life wasn't falling apart one unpaid bill at a time. 4 months along now. The bump was starting to show, and she'd had to safety pin her uniform skirt to keep it closed. Marcus hadn't even bothered to respond to her last 3 texts. Not that she'd expected him to. The moment she'd said the word pregnant, he'd looked at her like she'd sprouted a second head, mumbled something about needing time to think, and vanished like morning fog. "Good riddance," her friend Bex kept saying. "You're better off." Maybe, but better off still meant alone, still meant scared, still meant doing the math every night and realizing she was exactly $247 short of making rent. The couple in booth 9 finally left, stiffing her on the tip. Of course, Kala cleared their plates, pocketed the insulting handful of coins they'd left, and checked her phone during the brief lull. She'd meant to text her sister. Gemma lived 3 states away and they hadn't spoken in 2 years, but Kala had been working up the courage to reach out, to tell her about the baby, to maybe, possibly, ask for help. She'd typed the number from memory, attached the ultrasound photo and written, "I know we haven't talked, but I thought you should see this. I'm keeping it. Call me when you can." Now, staring at her phone, she realized with dawning horror that the message had gone through to the wrong number. 1 digit off. She could see it now. The 8 that should have been a 3. Her stomach dropped. Before she could figure out how to apologize to some stranger for sending them a photo of her uterus, 3 dots appeared. Someone was typing back. The reply came through at 11:47 p.m. "We need to talk. Don't leave. I'm coming to you." Kala stared at the message. A chill crept down her spine that had nothing to do with the diner's aggressive air conditioning. Some random person had her ultrasound, and instead of responding with confusion or dismissal, they'd said, "I'm coming to you." She blocked the number with shaking fingers, shoved her phone in her apron pocket, and told herself it was just some creep. Some weirdo who'd seen a pregnant woman's photo and decided to be threatening. It happened. The world was full of terrible people. She'd almost convinced herself by the time the door chimed. The man who walked in made every instinct she had snap to high alert. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal coat that probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. Dark hair pushed back from a face that belonged on magazine covers or warning labels. Sharp cheekbones, sharper jaw, and eyes the color of aged whiskey that found her immediately across the empty diner. Like he'd known exactly where she'd be standing. Kala's hand drifted instinctively to her stomach. A protective gesture she'd developed without realizing, her body already guarding what grew inside her. The man didn't approach the counter. Instead, he slid into the booth closest to the door, the one with the torn seat she kept meaning to report, and simply watched her. "Kitchen's closed," Kala said, keeping her voice flat. Bored. The voice of a woman who dealt with difficult customers every night and wasn't impressed by expensive coats or intense stares. "Coffee's still hot if you want some." "Coffee would be fine." His voice matched him. Low, controlled, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Something old-world buried under modern polish. Kala poured the coffee and brought it over, hyper-aware of his gaze tracking her every movement. When she set down the cup, she noticed his hands. Large, strong, with faint scars across the knuckles that didn't match the rest of his wealthy businessman appearance. Anything else? She wanted him to say no. Wanted him to drink his coffee and leave so she could finish her shift and go home to her cramped studio apartment and pretend this night hadn't happened. Sit down, Calla. Her blood turned to ice. She hadn't told him her name. Her name tag was in her locker because the pin had broken yesterday, and she hadn't replaced it yet. How do you know my name? Please. He gestured to the seat across from him. I'll explain everything, but I need you to sit. I need you to leave. She stepped back, reaching for the panic button under the counter. Hal, the night cook, was in the back. He was 63 with a bad hip, but he kept a baseball bat by the grill. Your mother's name was Ilsa, the man said quietly. She died when you were 8. A fire, they told you. But you know that's not true, don't you? You remember what really happened, even though you've spent 18 years trying to forget. Calla couldn't breathe. You remember the men who came to your house that night, the questions they asked, the way your mother told you to hide in the cellar and not come out no matter what you heard. His whiskey eyes held hers, and you remember what she could do, the gift she had, the one she passed to you. Stop. You feel things, Calla. When you touch people, you know things about them. Their emotions, their intentions, whether they're lying. He set down his coffee cup. Your mother had the same ability. So did her mother before her. It's in your blood. It's what got her killed. The diner felt too small, the buzzing lights too loud. Calla gripped the edge of a nearby table, her knuckles white. Who are you? My name is Stellan Voss. I've been looking for you for 7 years. The name meant nothing to her, but something about the way he said it, like it should mean something, like it carried weight she couldn't yet comprehend, made her stomach turn. You sent that text to my personal number, he continued, a number only a handful of people have. When I saw the ultrasound, I ran a trace, and when I realized who you were. He paused, something flickering in his expression. I had to come myself. You're insane. I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and you, Calla, are the last surviving heir of the Valdris bloodline. The people who killed your mother have been hunting you ever since. And now that you're carrying a child. His jaw tightened. Now they have even more reason to find you. The room spun. Calla grabbed the table harder, her vision blurring at the edges. She was nobody. A waitress, a pregnant woman who couldn't make rent. She didn't have a bloodline, didn't have hunters after her, didn't have anything except a dead mother and a lifetime of memories she'd buried so deep she'd almost convinced herself they weren't real. Almost. Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video. I don't know what you're talking about. Calla's voice came out steadier than she felt. 18 years of practice, of hiding, of pretending. I think you should leave before I call the police. Stellan didn't move. You can call them if you'd like, but they can't protect you from what's coming. I can. I don't need protection. 3 weeks ago, a man was asking questions about you at the county records office. 2 weeks ago, someone broke into your apartment while you were at work. Nothing was taken, but things were moved, weren't they? Searched. His eyes never left hers. You told yourself it was your imagination. It wasn't. Calla's throat tightened. She had noticed. The drawer that wasn't quite closed. The photo album that had been moved from the closet shelf to the bed. She'd convinced herself she was being paranoid, pregnancy hormones making her jumpy. How do you know that? Because I've had people watching you, protecting you from a distance while I confirmed you were who I thought you were. He leaned forward slightly. They're getting closer, Calla. The people who killed your mother. They've been searching for you as long as I have, and they're a better resource than they were 18 years ago. Why? The word cracked. Why would anyone care about me? Because of what you are, what your bloodline represents. Stellan's expression softened slightly, the first break in his controlled demeanor. The Valdris line was powerful. Your ancestors helped build the treaties that have kept peace between the packs for centuries. When they were massacred, the balance shifted. Wars have been brewing ever since. Wars that will kill thousands if they ignite. And I'm supposed to, what? Stop a war? You're supposed to survive. To let me protect you while we figure out who's hunting you and why. He reached into his coat and withdrew an envelope, sliding it across the table. Your medical debts, your rent arrears, your mother's outstanding funeral expenses that you've been paying off for 18 years. I can make all of it disappear tonight. Calla didn't touch the envelope. What do you want in return? 7 days. Come with me. Let me keep you safe and learn the truth about who you are. After that, if you want to leave, I'll give you enough money to start over anywhere in the world. New identity, new life, no strings. And if I say no right now, then I walk out that door and you never see me again. But the people hunting you won't stop. And without protection. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Calla thought about the cramped apartment. The bills piling up. The baby growing inside her. The baby she already loved more than she'd ever loved anything. The baby she couldn't afford to give a good life. She thought about her mother. The way she'd smiled even when things were hard. The way she'd held Calla close and whispered, "You're special, little one. Never forget that. But never let them see." "I want your word," Calla said slowly. "That after 7 days, I can leave if I want to. No tricks, no traps, no suddenly discovering I'm obligated to stay. You have it. I want more than words." Something like respect flickered in Stellan's eyes. "What did you have in mind?" "My mother used to talk about blood oaths, said they were unbreakable among your kind." She lifted her chin. "If you are what you say you are, swear it in blood." Stellan stood, and Calla realized again just how tall he was, how much space he occupied, how the air itself seemed to bend around him. He pulled a small knife from his belt, the handle worn with age, the blade glinting in the harsh fluorescent light. Without hesitation, he drew it across his palm. Blood welled up, dark and red. He offered her the knife. Calla's hands trembled as she took it. The metal was warm, as if it held its own heat. She pressed the edge to her palm, wincing at the sting, and watched her own blood rise. When she reached out to clasp his hand, she expected pain. Expected the simple pressure of flesh against flesh. What she felt instead rocked through her like lightning. Every nerve ending ignited. Her vision went white, then gold, then settled into something sharper than it had ever been. She could feel him, not just his hand, but his presence, his emotions, his truth. He wasn't lying. Everything he'd said, every word, rang with absolute sincerity. But beneath that, wrapped around it like vines around a trellis, was something else. Something that pulled at her core, with an intensity that stole her breath. A recognition. A connection that felt ancient and inevitable and terrifying. Stellan's grip tightened. His eyes widened slightly, and she knew, she could feel, that he'd experienced it too. Neither of them spoke. The moment stretched, taut as a wire. Then Stellan released her hand carefully, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket and tearing it in two. He offered her half first, waiting until she pressed it to her palm before tending to his own wound. "Dawn," he said, his voice rougher than before. "I'll send someone to collect you. Pack whatever matters to you." He paused at the door, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Get some sleep, Calla. Tomorrow, everything changes." Then he was gone, disappearing into the night like he'd never been there at all. Calla stood alone in the empty diner, blood seeping through the cloth on her palm, the phantom sensation of his touch still burning through her veins. What had she just agreed to? The car arrived at exactly 6:15 a.m. Calla had packed everything that mattered into a single duffel bag. 2 changes of clothes, her mother's locket, the ultrasound photos, and the worn paperback copy of poetry that Ilsa used to read aloud on rainy nights. Her entire life fit into something she could carry with one hand. The driver was a woman, tall, athletic, with close-cropped silver hair and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded Calla of her high school gym teacher. "Marin," the woman said by way of introduction. "I'm His Majesty's head of security. You'll be safe with me." His Majesty. The words sounded absurd applied to the man from the diner, but Marin said them without a trace of irony, so Calla kept her skepticism to herself. They drove for nearly 4 hours, leaving the city behind, then the suburbs, then the small towns with their gas stations and fast food chains. The landscape shifted gradually, flat farmland giving way to rolling hills, and then dense forest that seemed to swallow the road entirely. Finally, they turned onto a private drive marked only by a stone pillar with a symbol Calla didn't recognize. The trees pressed close for another mile before opening suddenly into a valley that stole her breath. The estate sprawled across the landscape like something from a fever dream. Not a castle exactly, but close. Stone and timber and glass, modern architecture woven seamlessly with old-world craftsmanship. Behind it, mountains rose sharp and snow-capped against the morning sky. "Welcome to Thornhaven," Marin said. Inside, the contradictions continued. The exterior suggested fortress, but the interior radiated warmth. Sunlight poured through massive windows. Fresh flowers sat on every surface. Somewhere distant, Calla heard laughter and the clatter of dishes. A woman named Odessa showed her to a suite larger than her entire apartment. The bed was enormous, piled with quilts and pillows. The bathroom had a tub deep enough to swim in, and the window overlooked a garden where actual roses bloomed despite the mountain chill. "His Majesty asked that you rest today," Odessa said. Her weathered face was kind, her accent faintly musical. "Dinner will be brought up, and tomorrow, when you're ready, he'll explain everything properly." After she left, Calla stood in the center of the room and tried to remember how to breathe. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. She was a waitress with a dead mother and a missing boyfriend and a baby she couldn't afford. She didn't belong in places with rose gardens and quilted beds and staff who called men "Your Majesty" without laughing. But her palms still throbbed where the knife had cut. The bond still hummed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat, and the baby kicked for the first time, right there in that beautiful room, as if to say, "We're here now. We might as well see what happens." Calla pressed her hand to her stomach and let herself cry. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of revelations. Stellan was patient, methodical. He showed her documents, photographs, family trees that stretched back centuries. The Valdris line, her mother's line, had been advisors to the Alpha Kings for generations. Empaths, they were called. People who could sense truth from lies, read intentions from a single touch, calm conflicts before they became wars. They'd been hunted to near extinction 20 years ago, a coordinated strike by a faction that wanted the old treaties dissolved, that wanted war instead of peace. Ilsa had escaped with infant Calla, gone into hiding, changed their names, spent the next 8 years running until they finally caught up with her. "We thought the line was dead," Stellan said. They were in his study, a room lined with books and maps, fire crackling in the massive hearth. "Until your text came through, until I saw your face and recognized Ilsa's features." "You knew my mother?" "I met her once, when I was 12. She came to advise my father during a territorial dispute." His expression shifted, something almost wistful. "She was remarkable. Calm in ways that made everyone around her calm. She read my father's enemies like open books and helped him navigate the situation without bloodshed." Calla's throat tightened. "She never told me any of this. She was protecting you. Anonymity was your only defense. Until I sent a text to the wrong number. Until then." He brought out objects next. Items recovered from the attack on her mother's family estate. Things that might hold residual impressions from that night. Stellan needed to know who had orchestrated the massacre. The faction responsible had gone underground afterward, but someone was still pulling strings. Someone was still hunting survivors. "You want me to read these?" Calla said, staring at the collection on his desk. "A woman's earring. A man's signet ring. Only if you're willing. I know what it costs you." She appreciated that he acknowledged it. Most people, when they learned what she could do, wanted to use her like a party trick. "Tell me what I'm thinking. Tell me if he's cheating." They didn't understand the toll it took. The way other people's emotions and memories crashed through her like waves, leaving her gasping and scraped raw. Calla picked up the earring first. The sensation hit immediately. A woman's terror, sharp and bright. Running through corridors, smoke, screaming, a child crying somewhere below. Hide her. Hide her. They can't find her. Calla gasped, the earring slipping from her fingers. "That was my grandmother." Her voice shook. She was trying to protect someone, a child. "You," Stellan said quietly. "She was trying to protect you." The ring was worse. It had belonged to one of the attackers, and when Calla touched it, she felt his cruelty like oil on her skin, his satisfaction, his loyalty to a man he called the Architect. No name, no face, just a title and an obsession with ending the bloodline completely. She dropped it and immediately retched, barely making it to the wastebasket before her stomach emptied. Stellan was beside her in an instant, one hand gathering her hair back, the other rubbing circles on her spine. "Enough." His voice was firm. "No more today." "But the Architect, tomorrow or never. I won't watch you destroy yourself for answers." She let him help her to the small sofa by the fire, let him bring water and a cool cloth for her forehead. Let him sit beside her in silence while her body stopped shaking. "The Architect," she said finally. That's what the attacker called him. The person in charge. Stellan's jaw hardened. "I've heard that name whispered in intelligence reports. Never confirmed. If he's real, if he's behind all of this, then he's the one who killed my mother. And the one still hunting you." Calla pressed her hand to her stomach. The baby was quiet now, but she felt its presence like a warm ember inside her. "Then we find him," she said. "Before he finds me." The days became a week. Calla fell into rhythm without meaning to. Mornings, she walked the gardens with Odessa, learning the names of flowers she'd never seen before. Afternoons, she worked with Stellan, reading objects when she could stomach it, piecing together fragments of a conspiracy that seemed to stretch across decades. Evenings, she ate dinner with the household staff, who treated her with a warmth she hadn't expected and didn't quite know how to accept. And somewhere in between, she started watching Stellan. Not obviously, not in ways he'd notice, but she found herself tracking how he moved through rooms, how he listened when people spoke to him, how he carried the weight of leadership like a physical burden across his shoulders. He worked constantly. She'd pass his study at midnight and see the light still burning, see him hunched over reports and correspondence, see the exhaustion he tried to hide from everyone else. He was kind to his people in quiet ways, a hand on a shoulder, an extra day off granted without being asked. The way he remembered everyone's names, their children's names, their struggles and triumphs, and he was kind to her. He never pushed her past her limits with the readings, never made her feel like a tool rather than a person. When she was tired, he insisted she rest. When she was frightened, he sat with her and said nothing, letting his presence alone be comfort. She didn't know what to do with any of it. On the 9th night, Calla found him on the ramparts. Thornhaven had actual ramparts, a reminder that the estate had been a fortress once, and centuries ago. Now they just offered a view of the mountains and the endless stars. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, joining him at the stone wall. Stellan glanced at her, something softening in his expression the way it always did now when she appeared. "Thinking too much. You. Baby's restless." She rubbed her stomach absently. "I think she knows something's coming." "She?" Feeling. I don't know for certain. Stellan looked at her belly, then quickly away, as if catching himself. The architect, he said after a moment. I've been chasing him for years. After the massacre, after what happened to your family, I swore I'd find him. Make him answer for it. His hands gripped the stone. 7 years, and I'm no closer than when I started. You found me. By accident. Because you sent a text to the wrong number. Maybe it wasn't the wrong number. The words left her before she could stop them. Maybe it was exactly the right one. He turned to look at her fully, and the moonlight made his features sharper, more exposed. She felt that pull again, the one that had ignited when they'd clasped bloodied hands in the diner. The bond, whatever it was, humming between them like a plucked string. Calla. His voice was rough. There are things I should tell you. Then tell me. When we made the oath, I felt something. Something I wasn't expecting. He paused, seeming to struggle with each word. My kind, we have bonds. Connections that form without our choosing. They're rare. Once in a lifetime, if you're fortunate. Her heart hammered against her ribs. And you felt that? With me? Yes. The admission hung in the cold mountain air. I didn't plan this, he continued, quieter now. I came looking for an empath to help me find the architect. I found... He stopped, shook his head. I found everything. You're brave in ways I didn't think people could be anymore. You face horrors through those readings and then stand up and ask what's next. You should be bitter, angry, broken after everything life has thrown at you, but you're not. You're warm and stubborn and stronger than anyone I've met. Stellan, I'm not asking you to stay past the 7 days. I meant what I promised. His eyes held hers, and she saw the restraint there, the iron will it took for him to not reach for her. But you should know. Whatever you decide, whenever you leave, part of me will always... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Calla thought about every man who'd ever disappointed her. Every promise broken, every vulnerability exploited. Every time she'd let herself hope and been crushed for it. She thought about Marcus, who'd vanished at the first sign of responsibility. About the parade of foster homes after her mother died, the families who looked at her strangely when she knew things she shouldn't know. She thought about walls and why she'd built them, and what it might mean to let them crack. Then she stopped thinking. She rose on her toes and kissed him. Stellan froze for half a heartbeat. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, and he kissed her back with a desperation that made her knees weak. One hand cradled the back of her head, the other splayed across her lower back, holding her like she was precious and fragile, and his all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing ragged, Calla pressed her forehead to his chest. I'm terrified, she whispered. I don't know if I can be what you need. You already are. This is insane. We've known each other 9 days. Some things don't follow timelines. His lips brushed her temple. But I meant it. You're free to leave whenever you want. The bond doesn't change that. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Ask me again. After we find the architect. After this is over and I've had time to breathe. She touched his jaw, felt the muscle tighten beneath her fingers. Ask me again and I'll give you a real answer. Something like hope flickered across his face. I can work with that. Good. She kissed him once more, softer this time. Now walk me back before I do something reckless. His laugh was low, warm, surprised. Reckless doesn't sound terrible. It does when I'm 4 months pregnant and running on no sleep. He took her hand, threading their fingers together, and led her back through the ancient corridors of Thornhaven. At her door, he kissed her forehead with a tenderness that made something twist behind her ribs. Sleep well, Calla. You too. She watched him walk away, his restraint evident in every rigid line of his body. Then she closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding, lips still tingling. What was she doing? And why did it feel so terrifyingly right? The attack came on the 11th night. Calla had been reading the final object, a leather journal recovered from a raid on a suspected faction hideout. The pages were mostly coded, indecipherable, but the cover itself held impressions. She'd barely touched it when the vision slammed into her. A room. Elegant, old money. Walls lined with hunting trophies and oil paintings. A man standing at the window, his back to her. Gray hair, tall, distinguished bearing. His voice carried the smooth confidence of someone who'd never been denied anything. The empath survived. She's at Thornhaven now, under Voss's protection. Another voice, younger, eager to please. Should we move on the compound? No, too fortified. But she'll have to leave eventually. The child makes her vulnerable. We wait. We watch. And when the moment comes... The gray-haired man turned slightly, and Calla caught his profile. Sharp nose, cold eyes, a thin smile that made her skin crawl. We finish what we started 20 years ago. The vision shifted, twisted, and suddenly she was seeing something else. A map on his desk. Thornhaven's layout. Guard rotations. Weak points in the perimeter. Someone inside was feeding him information. Calla ripped herself out of the vision with a gasp that felt like drowning in reverse. The journal tumbled from her fingers, and she would have collapsed if Stellan hadn't caught her. What did you see? He knows. Her voice cracked. The architect. He knows I'm here. He knows about the baby. And someone inside Thornhaven is working for him. Stellan's expression went cold in a way she hadn't seen before. Dangerous. Lethal. Did you see who? No. Just that he has information. Guard schedules, layout, everything. She gripped his arms, her nails digging in. He's planning to wait until I leave, until I'm vulnerable. Then you won't leave. Stellan, he has someone inside your house. Nowhere is safe until we find out who. He pulled her close, one hand cradling her head against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, rapid despite his controlled exterior. I won't let them touch you, he said against her hair. Either of you. You can't watch me every second. Watch me try. But even as he held her, Calla's mind raced. The gray-haired man, the distinguished bearing. Something about him nagged at her, something familiar she couldn't quite place. Then it clicked. The portrait in the East Wing. She'd walked past it dozens of times without really seeing it. A formal painting of Stellan's father with his council, and standing at his right hand, gray-haired even then, with that same sharp nose and cold smile. Lord Harwick, she breathed. Stellan went rigid. What? The architect. It's Lord Harwick. That's impossible. But his voice wavered. Harwick served my father for 30 years. He's on my council. He held me at my parents' funeral. I know what I saw. Calla pulled back to meet his eyes. He's the one who ordered my family killed. He's the one who's been hunting me ever since. And he's been sitting at your table this whole time, waiting for the right moment to strike. The argument that followed was the worst they'd had. Stellan wanted to send her away immediately. A safe house in the south. Guards she could trust. Far from Harwick's reach while he dealt with the traitor. Calla refused. If I run, he wins. He keeps his position, keeps his spy network, and keeps planning. You'll be fighting shadows while he picks off your allies one by one. And if you stay, you're a target. You and the baby both. Stellan's voice cracked on the last word. I can't lose you. Do you understand that? I can't watch them take you the way they took everyone else. Then don't send me away. She grabbed his hands, forced him to look at her. Use me. Let him think he's winning. Let him make his move while we're ready for it. You're asking me to use you as bait. I'm asking you to trust me. The words hung between them. Stellan's jaw worked, emotions warring across his face. Fear, anger, desperation, and beneath it all, something raw and vulnerable. If something goes wrong, it won't. You can't promise that. No. She squeezed his hands. But I can promise that running won't save me. It didn't save my mother. She spent 8 years hiding and they found her anyway. The only way this ends is if we end it. Together. Stellan closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the fear was still there, but so was resolution. Together, he repeated. But we do this my way. You don't leave my sight. At the first sign of real danger, you run. You don't argue, you don't hesitate. You run and let me handle Harwick. Stellan, please. His voice broke. Give me that much. Let me know you'll be safe if everything falls apart. She touched his face, felt the tension in his jaw, the desperation beneath his controlled surface. Okay, I promise. He kissed her then, hard and desperate, pulling her against him like she might disappear if he let go. His hands shook where they gripped her waist, hers tangled in his hair, holding him just as tightly. When they broke apart, foreheads pressed together, both breathing ragged, he whispered her name like a prayer. I trust you, she said. Whatever happens, I trust you. Something in his expression shattered and rebuilt itself, stronger than before. Then let's end this. They moved within 48 hours. Stellan fed false information through suspected channels. A journey south. Calla being moved to a safe house. Light security. Just 3 guards. An opportunity too perfect to ignore. Harwick took the bait. The ambush was set at the old mill outside of Thornhaven's territory. Calla rode in the decoy carriage, but this time she wasn't helpless. Maren sat beside her, armed to the teeth. And in the forest surrounding them, 24 of Stellan's most trusted warriors waited. They didn't have to wait long. Harwick's men emerged from the trees like ghosts, crossbows raised, swords drawn. They surrounded the carriage with military precision, and a cold voice cut through the night. Open the door, slowly. Maren nodded to Calla. This was it. Calla stepped out of the carriage, hands raised, playing the terrified pregnant woman. It wasn't entirely acting. Her pulse spiked, and the baby chose that exact moment to kick, as if reminding her what was at stake. Harwick emerged from the shadows, and seeing him in person made her blood freeze. He looked exactly as he had in the vision, distinguished, elegant, and utterly soulless behind those cold eyes. The last Valdris, he said, approaching her with a predator's smile. You have your mother's face. I remember watching her burn. Calla's hands curled into fists. You'll remember watching yourself hang too. Harwick laughed. Spirited. I can see why Voss is so taken with you. It's almost a shame. He drew a dagger from his belt. But your bloodline ends tonight. You and that abomination growing inside you. I don't think so. Stellan's voice rang out from the darkness. Then chaos erupted. Warriors poured from the trees. Steel clashed against steel. Harwick's men, expecting an easy ambush, found themselves surrounded and outmatched. Maren shoved Calla behind the carriage, forming a shield with her body while the battle raged. Harwick tried to run. He didn't get far. Stellan intercepted him at the tree line, moving faster than any human should. They fought viciously, blade against blade, and Calla caught glimpses through the chaos. Harwick was skilled, experienced, but Stellan was fury incarnate. Every strike carried 20 years of grief and rage. Then Harwick stumbled. Stellan's blade found his throat. Yield, Stellan snarled, or die here. Harwick laughed, blood trickling from a cut on his cheek. Kill me, another will take my place. The faction is bigger than one man. Then you'll tell me everyone involved, every name, every safe house, every plan. Stellan pressed the blade harder. Or I'll make your death last weeks instead of minutes. You don't have the stomach. Actually, a new voice interrupted. He really does. Everyone turned. A woman stepped from the trees. Young, mid-20s, with auburn hair and Calla's mother's eyes. She walked with a limp, like someone who'd recently recovered from injury, and her clothes were travel-worn and dirty. But her face. Calla's heart stopped. Gemma? Her sister smiled, tired but fierce. Hey, Calla, sorry I'm late. I've been tracking this bastard for 2 years. She held up a leather satchel. And I have every piece of evidence we need to bring down the entire faction. Harwick's face went ashen. The fight bled out of him as he realized how thoroughly he'd lost. Stellan looked between the sisters, then at Harwick, then back at Gemma. You were the one feeding us intel, the anonymous tips about faction movements? Guilty. Gemma's smile turned sharp. Our mother made me promise to watch over Calla. Took me a while to find her, but here I am. She walked up to Harwick, studying him with cold contempt. You killed my mother, my grandmother, my entire family. And you thought you could finish the job? She spat at his feet. You're nothing but a coward who murders children in their beds. Take him, Stellan ordered. Chain him in the deep cells. He doesn't see daylight until the trial. As his warriors dragged Harwick away, Calla crossed the blood-soaked ground to her sister. They stared at each other for a long moment. So many years. So many unanswered questions. Then Gemma opened her arms and Calla fell into them, sobbing. I've got you, Gemma whispered, holding her tight. I've always had you. Even when you didn't know it. The trial took 3 weeks. Harwick tried everything. Denial, deflection, claims of loyalty twisted by Calla's unreliable visions. But Gemma's evidence was irrefutable. Letters in his own hand. Financial records tracing payments to assassins. Testimony from former associates who'd been granted immunity in exchange for truth. The council found him guilty of treason, murder, conspiracy, and crimes against the crown. He hanged at dawn on a gray morning. Calla didn't attend. Instead, she sat in the gardens with Gemma, wrapped in blankets against the chill, watching the sky lighten. You didn't have to come, Gemma said quietly. Neither did you. But you spent 2 years hunting him anyway. Mom made me promise. Gemma's voice caught. Before she sent me away that night. She knew they were coming, knew she couldn't save both of us. So she hid you in the cellar and sent me running with instructions to a contact 3 towns over. She wiped her eyes. I wanted to go back. Every day for years I wanted to find you. But the contact said if I surfaced too soon, they'd track me to you. So I waited. I gathered evidence. And when I finally found you, I was texting ultrasounds to the wrong number. Gemma laughed, watery but genuine. Of all the ways for the Alpha King to find the last Valdris heir. They sat in comfortable silence. Somewhere in the castle, Calla heard voices. Life continuing despite the morning's grim business. He loves you, Gemma said eventually. Stellan, I've watched him these past weeks. The way he looks at you, the way he can barely stand to be in a different room. Calla's hand drifted to her stomach. The baby was 5 months along now, the bump impossible to hide. I know. Do you love him? The question should have been complicated. It wasn't. Yes, Calla said. I think I have since the night he asked me to trust him, and actually meant it. Gemma nodded slowly. Then what are you waiting for? She found Stellan on the ramparts at sunset. Their spot now. The place where they'd had their first real conversation, their first kiss, their first confession. The mountains glowed amber and rose, and the wind carried the scent of pine and approaching snow. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and his face transformed the way it always did now. Softer, warmer, like she was the best thing he'd seen all day. It's done, he said. The faction is dismantled. Gemma's evidence helped us identify 17 other conspirators. They're being arrested as we speak. I know. Marin told me. Calla joined him at the wall, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. For a moment, they just watched the sunset together. 7 days, she said finally. Stellan's expression flickered. What? That was our agreement. 7 days, then I'm free to go. She felt him tense beside her. It's been 5 weeks. I know. His voice was carefully neutral. You've been free to leave any time. The gold is waiting. New identity papers, if you want them. I can have you settled anywhere in the world by tomorrow. Is that what you want? For me to leave? He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he spoke, his voice was rough. You know it isn't. Then ask me. Stellan turned to face her fully, and she saw everything he'd been holding back. The hope he was afraid to feel, the fear of rejection, the love he'd been guarding so carefully, trying not to pressure her. Calla, I love you. The words came easily, finally. I love how you carry the weight of an entire kingdom and still find time to ask how I'm feeling. I love how you held my hair back when the visions made me sick and never once made me feel weak for it. I love how you look at my stomach like my baby is already yours, even though you've never said it. Stellan's breath caught. I spent my whole life running, she continued, hiding. Convincing myself I didn't deserve good things because good things always got taken away. But you, she touched his face, felt his jaw tremble beneath her palm. You make me want to stay, not because of the bond, not because of safety, but because when I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally home. Calla, her name cracked in the middle. So ask me to stay. He pulled her close, forehead pressed to hers, breathing her in. Stay, he whispered. Stay with me. Marry me. Let me love you for the rest of our lives. Let me raise this child with you. Be a father to her. Build something real and lasting and good. Yes. Let me. He stopped, blinked. What? Yes. She laughed, tears streaming down her face. Yes to all of it. Stellan kissed her like a man who'd been drowning and finally found air. Deep and desperate and reverent all at once. His hands cradled her face, her back, her stomach where the baby kicked against his palm. When they finally broke apart, a voice drifted up from the courtyard below. About damn time? They looked down to see Gemma grinning up at them, hands on her hips. How long has she been there? Stellan muttered. Probably the whole time. Calla laughed through her tears. Get used to it. She's family. So are you. He kissed her forehead, soft and sure. So are you. The bonding ceremony took place under the full moon, 3 weeks later. Calla wore deep green silk that flowed over her growing stomach like water. Stellan wore formal black, his family crest gleaming at his shoulder. The entire household gathered in the great hall, candles burning in every corner, flowers spilling from every surface. Gemma stood beside Calla, eyes bright with unshed tears. Maren stood beside Stellan, looking almost soft for once. They spoke their vows in the old way. Promises of partnership, of choice, of love freely given. When Stellan slipped the ring onto Calla's finger, his hands were steady, but his voice shook. I choose you, he said, today and every day after. I choose you back, Calla whispered, for everything that comes. The bond sealed between them, not a chain, but a bridge. Two people who'd found each other against impossible odds, choosing to walk forward together. The celebration lasted until dawn. Music and dancing and toasts that grew progressively more ridiculous as the wine flowed. Gemma gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure. Odessa presented a cake that could have fed a small army, and through it all, Stellan kept Calla close, like he still couldn't quite believe she was real. Later, much later, they finally escaped to their chambers. Their chambers now. The realization still made Calla's breath catch. Stellan loved her slowly that night, reverently, worshipping every inch of her changing body. He whispered promises against her skin, pressed kisses to her stomach, told the baby stories about the family she was being born into. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the moonlight, his hand resting on her belly where their daughter kicked lazily. Tell me something, Calla said. Something I don't know. Stellan was quiet for a moment, thinking, when I got that text, your ultrasound. I stared at it for an hour before I traced the number. He kissed her shoulder. Something about it felt different, important. I almost convinced myself I was being ridiculous. But you came anyway. I came anyway. His arms tightened around her. Best wrong number I ever received. Calla laughed, pressing closer to him. I was so scared that night. Alone and pregnant and drowning in debt. I thought my life was over. She turned in his arms to face him. I sent that text to the wrong number and you answered. You showed up. You changed everything. You changed everything, he corrected. You gave me back my hope, my purpose, my family. He kissed her softly. You're my home, Kala. You and our daughter. Everything else is just geography. She fell asleep in his arms, warm and safe and loved in ways she'd never dared to dream. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly overhead, indifferent to the small miracle happening in the castle below. A woman who'd spent her life running had finally found a place to stay. A man who'd spent his life searching had finally found what he'd been looking for. And somewhere in her belly, their daughter dreamed the first dreams of a child who would be born into love. It had started with a wrong number. It ended with home. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts. And if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.